Jake Morrison stood in the huge metal hallway of Nexus Prime Space Station. The walls were so tall, he had to bend his neck back to see the ceiling. Strange lights flickered above him in colors he had never seen before. The air smelled like electricity, and something sweet that made his nose tickle. "Stay close to me," Jake told his team. "We don't want to get lost in this place." Dr. Lisa Bennett walked beside him, carrying a metal case full of Earth's best technology. Her hands were shaking a little. She had worked for 10 years to prepare for this day. Behind them, 3 other humans followed quietly. They all wore their best blue uniforms with the Earth symbol on the chest. The hallway was full of aliens. Jake had studied pictures of them, but seeing them in person was different. The Zephyrians looked like walking crystals that made music when they moved. Some were tall as trees, others small as children. Their bodies caught the light and threw rainbows on the walls. The Kethvar were giants made of dark stone. They moved slowly, and their footsteps made the floor shake. When they talked, their voices sounded like thunder rolling across the sky. Jake could feel their words in his chest. The strangest ones were the voidlings. They had no solid bodies at all. They looked like heat waves rising from hot road in summer. When they thought something, Jake could feel it tickling the edges of his mind like a whisper he couldn't quite hear. "The council room is just ahead," said their guide, a small robot that floated beside them. Its voice was flat and emotionless. "Please prepare your presentation materials." Jake nodded and checked his uniform one more time. Earth had spent 20 years building ships fast enough to reach this place. They had solved problems that seemed impossible. Now they wanted to join the Galactic Engineering Consortium, the most important group of builders and makers in the galaxy. The council room was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. Hundreds of aliens sat in rows that went up and up like a stadium. Each species had their own section, with special seats and breathing equipment. In the center was a raised platform where the council leaders sat. High Architect Velther of the Zephyrian Empire was a massive crystal being that sparkled like a diamond. His voice made beautiful music when he spoke. Chief Engineer Murgath of the Kethvar Alliance was a mountain of black stone with glowing red eyes. The Voidling representative had no name that humans could pronounce. It existed as a shimmering outline that hurt to look at directly. "Humans of Earth." Velther's musical voice filled the room. "You have requested membership in our consortium. Show us what your species has built." Lisa stepped forward and opened her case. She pulled out a small model of Earth's newest spaceship. It was made of steel and aluminum, with big engines on the back and thick armor plating. Compared to the flowing, elegant alien ships they had seen, it looked like a metal box with wings. "This is our fastest ship," Lisa said, her voice echoing in the huge room. "It can travel faster than light using a fusion drive system. The hull is made of layered metal that can stop most weapons. The engines use controlled explosions to push us through space." A sound like breaking glass filled the room. The Zephyrians were laughing. Their crystal bodies chimed and rang like bells. The Kethvar made deep rumbling sounds that shook the floor. Even the Voidlings sent waves of amusement through the air. Controlled explosions? Murgath's voice boomed. "You propel your vessels by setting off bombs behind them? How wonderfully primitive." "The hull design is equally crude," added Velther. "Metal plates bolted together like ancient armor. We abandoned such methods when we learned to weave force fields from pure energy." Lisa's face turned red, but she continued. "Our ships are reliable and easy to fix. When something breaks, we can replace it with simple tools. The design has worked for us for many years." "Worked, perhaps, but barely." The Voidling representative projected its thoughts directly into their minds. "Your computational systems use binary code and silicon chips. We transcended physical matter for data processing eons ago. Lisa pulled out a small computer. This quantum processor can solve problems that would take quantum tunneling through silicon substrates. Velther interrupted. How quaint. We manipulate probability itself to process information. Your device is like counting on fingers compared to our methods. Jake stepped forward. Our methods might look simple, but they work. We've built cities that touch the clouds, machines that can think, and rockets that took us to the stars. We've done all of this in less than 1,000 years. Yes, through brute force, Mergath rumbled. You compress space-time with raw energy instead of persuading it to bend gracefully. Your fusion reactors are barely controlled chaos. We achieve the same results by singing to the atoms until they dance together willingly. Your weapons are equally unsophisticated, added another alien Jake didn't recognize. Projectiles hurled through space by explosive force. We learned to unmake matter at the quantum level millions of years ago. The council members whispered among themselves in languages that sounded like wind chimes, earthquakes, and thoughts that had no words. Jake could tell they were not impressed. The application is denied, Velther announced. Humanity is not ready to join civilized society. Your technology is too primitive, your methods too crude. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when you have learned to work with the universe instead of against it, you may apply again. The words hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. Lisa made a small sound like she was about to cry. The other humans looked down at their feet. We understand, Jake said quietly. Thank you for your time. As they walked back through the long hallway, Lisa whispered to Jake, They think we're barbarians. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, Jake replied. Sometimes the best solutions come from thinking differently than everyone else. He didn't know how right he was. In just a few months, the galaxy would face a threat that all their elegant technology and sophisticated methods could not handle. When that time came, the crude, primitive, brute force methods of humanity would be exactly what the universe needed. But for now, the humans walked back to their simple metal ship, dismissed and underestimated by beings who had forgotten that. Sometimes the old ways work best. 6 months had passed since the humiliating rejection at Nexus Prime. Jake Morrison was back on Earth, working in his small office at the Pentagon. The walls were covered with pictures of spaceships and star charts. On his desk sat the model of the ship that the aliens had laughed at. The morning alarm buzzed loudly through the building. Jake looked up from his coffee as red lights flashed in the hallway. Emergency meetings were rare, but this one felt different. The message on his computer screen made his blood run cold. All senior staff report to Conference Room Alpha immediately. Priority 1 situation. Jake ran down the hallway, his boots clicking on the polished floor. Other officers were rushing in the same direction, their faces worried. In the conference room, General Ryan Cooper stood at the front, his expression grim. Behind him, a large screen showed a map of the galaxy with red dots spreading across it like a disease. Gentlemen, we have a problem, Cooper began. 6 hours ago, we received this message from the Galactic Council. The screen changed to show Velther, the crystal alien who had rejected their application. But now the beautiful music in his voice was replaced by something that sounded like breaking. Glass, people of Earth. Velther's image said, We require your assistance. A mechanical race called the Devourers has begun consuming star systems in the outer rim. Our traditional weapons and defenses are completely ineffective against them. They adapt to our technology faster than we can develop countermeasures. The image changed to show huge angular ships that looked like geometric nightmares. They moved through space like hungry spiders, extending metal tentacles toward planets and stars. Where they touched, everything was consumed and turned into more of their kind. We are desperate, Velther continued. Our reality-warping weapons, our quantum disruptors, our dimensional phase cannons, none of them work for more than a few minutes. The Devourers analyze our attacks and become immune to them. We need ... unconventional solutions. Jake almost smiled at that last part. 6 months ago, unconventional had been another word for primitive. Dr. Patricia Stone entered the room, carrying a stack of papers. She was Earth's top physicist, a small woman with gray hair and eyes that seemed to see right through people. Behind her came Admiral Kevin Hayes, commander of the human space fleet. How bad is it? Hayes asked. Cooper pointed at the screen. They've consumed 12 star systems in the past month. Every time the alien fleets engage them, they lose more ships. The Devourers are learning faster than anyone expected. What kind of technology are we dealing with? Dr. Stone asked. According to the reports, they're fully mechanical. No biological components, no energy-based life support systems. They exist purely to consume matter and energy, then use it to build more of themselves. Jake studied the images of the Devourer ships. They were ugly, brutal-looking things with no elegant curves or flowing lines. They looked like they had been built by someone who cared only about function, not beauty. They look familiar, he said quietly. What do you mean? Cooper asked. They're built like us, Jake explained. All sharp angles and practical design. No wasted space, no decoration. Just pure function. Dr. Stone nodded slowly. That might be why they're so effective against alien technology. The advanced civilizations build their weapons like art pieces. Beautiful, elegant, but complex. These Devourers are like a hammer hitting a watch. Can we help? Hayes asked. They're asking for our help, Cooper said. After rejecting us, they want to know if we have any ideas for fighting something that can adapt to energy weapons and exotic matter manipulation. Dr. Stone smiled for the first time since entering the room. I think we might have exactly what they need. 3 hours later, Jake found himself in the underground laboratories of the Prometheus Engineering Works. The facility was hidden beneath the Nevada desert, where Earth's best engineers worked on projects that officially didn't exist. Matt Rodriguez, the chief designer, was standing beside a huge metal device that looked like a cannon crossed with a rocket launcher. Sparks flew from welding torches as workers assembled similar weapons nearby. This is what we've been working on, Rodriguez explained. Electromagnetic railguns that fire tungsten rods at incredible speeds. No energy beams, no exotic particles, just simple kinetic energy. Will it work? Jake asked. Against energy shields. And adaptive armor? Maybe. The beauty of kinetic weapons is that they're too simple to adapt to. How do you become immune to a chunk of metal moving at 10,000 miles per hour? Dr. Stone examined the weapon. The aliens have been fighting with technology so advanced that it's almost like magic. These Devourers probably have countermeasures for every type of energy weapon imaginable. But they might not know how to handle a good old-fashioned bullet. Rodriguez added. Admiral Hayes walked up to them, looking at the assembly line of weapons. How many can you build? Give us 48 hours, and we can outfit the entire fleet, Rodriguez replied. We've also been working on some other ideas. Chemical explosive missiles, plasma cutters powered by simple electrical systems, even steel. Cables fired from magnetic launchers. Steel cables? Jake asked. For entangling enemy ships, Rodriguez explained. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones. The next morning, Jake stood on the observation deck of the USS Defiance, humanity's newest heavy cruiser. The ship was nothing like the elegant alien vessels he had seen at Nexus Prime. It was angular and brutal, covered in armor plating and weapon hardpoints. It looked like it had been built for war, not for beauty. Captain Nicole Turner stood beside. him watching the crew load the new weapons. "Think this will work?" she asked. "The aliens laughed at our technology," Jake replied. "Said we were too primitive to join their club. Maybe being primitive is exactly what we need right now." Dr. Amanda Foster, the ship's chief scientist, joined them at the window. "I've been studying the Devourer technology," she said. "Their adaptive algorithms are incredibly sophisticated. They can analyze and counter any energy-based attack within minutes." "What about mechanical attacks?" Turner asked. "That's the interesting part," Foster replied. "Their databases seem to focus entirely on energy patterns and exotic physics. They might not know how to handle simple mechanical force." As the fleet prepared to leave Earth, Jake thought about the irony of the situation. The aliens had rejected humanity for being too crude, too primitive, too mechanical. Now those same qualities might be the key to saving the galaxy. The Defiance and her sister ships were loaded with the most primitive weapons humans could build. No fancy energy beams or reality-warping devices. Just chunks of metal fired at high speed, chemical explosives, and mechanical devices that would have been at home in a museum. "All ships, prepare for departure," Turner announced over the comm system. "We're going to show the galaxy what human engineering can do." As the fleet moved away from Earth, Jake wondered if they were flying toward their doom or toward humanity's greatest triumph. Either way, they were going to face the Devourers with the same crude, primitive, brute force methods that had been dismissed by the Galactic Council. Sometimes, Jake thought, the old ways really are the best ways. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Nicole Turner stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, staring at the main screen in disbelief. What she saw looked like a scene from a nightmare. The outer planets of the system were gone. Where they should have been, only empty space remained, filled with floating debris and the twisted remains of what had once been worlds. In the distance, massive mechanical shapes moved through the darkness like hungry spiders. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Chris Parker from the sensor station. "They ate entire planets." Turner nodded grimly. "How many Devourer ships are we looking at?" 12 capital ships, each one about the size of a small moon," Parker replied. They're there, feeding on the 4th planet right now." On the screen, one of the Devourer ships extended long metal tentacles toward a dying world. The tentacles burrowed into the planet's surface like hungry worms, sucking up rock and metal and everything else they could find. The planet was shrinking, visibly as they watched. "Where are the alien fleets?" Turner asked. "Pulling back to minimum safe distance," Parker said. "Looks like they've taken heavy losses. I'm reading debris from at least 30 ships." Turner studied the tactical display. The Devourer ships were unlike anything in the human military database. They looked like geometric puzzles made of black metal, constantly shifting and reconfiguring themselves. No two ships had exactly the same shape, as if they were still growing and changing. "Sir," Parker continued, "I'm getting a transmission from the Zephyrian command ship. Put it through." The screen flickered and showed the familiar crystal form of High Architect Velther. But the proud, musical being who had rejected humanity's application was gone. In its place was something that looked broken and desperate. "Human vessels." Velther's voice cracked like breaking glass. "You should not be here. These creatures are beyond anything we have ever encountered. They have adapted to every weapon we possess." "What have you tried?" Turner asked. "Everything. Reality disruptors, quantum phase cannons, dimensional pocket bombs. Each weapon works for a few minutes, then becomes useless. They learn faster than we can adapt." Turner looked at her crew. "Well, we're not here to retreat. All ships, prepare for attack. Load kinetic projectiles and prepare to fire on my command." "Captain," came a voice from the communications station. "The Zephyrian command ship is requesting that we reconsider. They say our weapons are too primitive to be effective." "Tell them to watch and learn," Turner replied. The human fleet moved into attack formation. The Defiance and her sister ships looked tiny compared to the massive Devourer vessels, but they bristled with weapons that hadn't been seen in galactic warfare for millions of years. "All ships, this is Defiance Actual," Turner announced over the fleetcom. "We're going to show these machines what human engineering can do. Target the lead Devourer ship and prepare kinetic bombardment." The first salvo fired from the human fleet was simple and brutal. Hundreds of tungsten rods, each one the size of a telephone pole, streaked through space at incredible speeds. They had no guidance systems, no energy signatures, no exotic physics. They were just chunks of dense metal moving very, very fast. The Devourer ships noticed the incoming projectiles and began to respond. Their adaptive systems kicked in, analyzing the attack and preparing countermeasures. But there was nothing to analyze. The tungsten rods were just metal moving in straight lines. The rods struck the lead Devourer ship like a hammer blow. The vessel's hull, designed to deflect energy weapons and exotic matter beams, crumpled under the simple kinetic impact. Huge holes appeared in its surface, venting atmosphere and sparks into space. "Direct hits on the primary target," Parker reported, excitement in his voice. "The Devourer ship is showing major structural damage." Dr. Amanda Foster monitored the enemy. Response from her science station: "The Devourer's adaptive systems are trying to analyze the attack, but they're having trouble. Their countermeasures are designed for energy patterns and quantum effects, not simple kinetic force." "Fire second salvo," Turner ordered. "Mix in some chemical explosives this time." The second wave of projectiles was more varied. Along with the tungsten rods, the human ships fired old-fashioned missiles powered by chemical rockets. The missiles were crude compared to the sophisticated weapons the aliens used, but they carried payloads of conventional explosives that detonated on impact. That the Devourer ships began to adapt. Their hulls started to shift and change, developing reactive armor and point defense systems. But the adaptation was slow and clumsy compared to how they had countered the alien energy weapons. "They're learning," Foster reported, "but much slower than when facing the alien fleets. I think their adaptive algorithms are optimized for complex technology, not simple mechanical systems." Turner smiled grimly. "Good. Launch the cable missiles." This was one of Rodriguez's stranger ideas. Missiles that fired steel cables from magnetic launchers, designed to entangle enemy ships like fishing nets. The concept was so simple, it was almost ridiculous. But it worked. The cables wrapped around the Devourer ships' extending tentacles, fouling their movement and preventing them from feeding. The mechanical creatures tried to cut through the cables with energy beams, but the steel simply absorbed the energy and glowed red-hot without breaking. "Target is entangled and unable to maneuver," Parker reported. "The other Devourer ships are moving to assist." "Hit them with plasma cutters," Turner ordered. The plasma cutters were another throwback to earlier technology. Instead of sophisticated energy weapons that manipulated matter at the quantum level, these were simple devices that used electrical current to create cutting plasma. They were crude, inefficient, and completely outside the Devourer's experience. Plasma beams sliced through the entangled Devourer ship's hull like hot knives through butter. The creature's adaptive systems had no idea how to counter something so basic and primitive. "First target is breaking apart," Foster announced. "The other Devourer ships are pulling back." They seemed confused. Turner watched as the massive mechanical creature came apart in space, its pieces drifting away like the debris of a demolished building. It was the first Devourer ship to be destroyed since the invasion began. "This is High Architect Velther," came a transmission from the Zephyrian. "Command ship, how did you accomplish this?" "Our most advanced weapons barely scratched their hulls." "Simple," Turner replied. "We used the oldest weapons in the book. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to hit it with something heavy and sharp." The remaining Devourer ships began to retreat, but not before they had learned something from the encounter. Their adaptive systems started to evolve new countermeasures, but the process was slow and inefficient. They were like advanced computers trying to solve a problem by counting on their fingers. "They're adapting," Foster warned, "but it's taking them much longer than usual." "I think we've found their weakness." Turner nodded. "Signal the fleet. We're going to pursue and engage, and send a message to Earth. Tell them we need more tungsten rods and chemical explosives. Lots more." As the human fleet moved after the retreating Devourers, Turner thought about the irony of the situation. The most advanced mechanical race in the galaxy was being defeated by the most primitive weapons humanity could build. The aliens had laughed at human technology, called it crude and unsophisticated. Now that same crude technology was accomplishing what all their elegant energy weapons could not. Sometimes, Turner thought, the old ways really were the best ways. And sometimes, being primitive was exactly what you needed to be. The battle was far from over, but humanity had proven something important. When the universe threw an impossible problem at them, they didn't try to solve it with elegant sophistication. They solved it with a bigger hammer dot, and sometimes that was exactly what the universe needed. News of the human victory spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. For the first time in millions of years, they were discussing primitive technology, as if it were the most advanced science in the universe. High Architect Velther stood before the assembled representatives, his crystal form dim with exhaustion. "The humans accomplished in 3 hours what our combined fleets could not do in 3 months," he announced. "They destroyed a Devourer capital ship using weapons we abandoned when we learned to walk upright." Chief Engineer Murgath of the Cathvar Alliance rumbled his agreement. "Their methods violate every principle of advanced warfare. They use brute force where we use finesse, mechanical systems where we use energy fields. Yet they succeed where we fail." The Voidling representative projected waves of confusion through the chamber. "We must understand their methods. Send our best scientists to observe them directly." 3 days later, a Zephyrian science vessel arrived at the human fleet's position. Dr. Elanthi, the most brilliant physicist in the Zephyrian Empire, materialized on the bridge of the USS Defiance in a shower of crystalline light. "This is impossible," were the first words out of her harmonic voice as she looked around the bridge. "Your control systems are mechanical switches and physical buttons. Where are your quantum interfaces? Your thought-responsive controls?" Captain Turner gestured to the rows of switches and gauges that covered the bridge walls. "We like to be able to fix things when they break. Hard to repair a thought-responsive control in the middle of a battle." Dr. Patricia Stone, who had arrived from Earth aboard a fast courier ship, welcomed the alien scientist. "Sometimes the simple solution is the best solution," she explained. "Your people have become so advanced that you've forgotten how to think. Simply, but your weapons operate on principles we discarded eons ago," Dr. Elanthi protested. "Kinetic energy, chemical reactions, mechanical force. These are the tools of primitives." "These are the tools that work," Stone replied. "When you fire a tungsten rod at something, there's no complex physics to analyze. It's just mass times velocity equals impact. The Devourers can't adapt to that because there's nothing to adapt to." The real breakthrough came when Chief Engineer Tony Martinez proposed his most radical idea yet. He had been studying the Devourer technology trying to understand how they moved so quickly between star systems. What he discovered changed everything. They're using dimensional fold drives, Martinez explained to the assembled scientists and engineers. But they're doing it mechanically, not through energy manipulation. They're actually physically pushing their way through space-time. Dr. Elanthy's crystal form brightened with interest. Impossible. Space-time cannot be manipulated through mechanical force. The energy requirements would be astronomical. Unless you don't try to manipulate it, Martinez said. Unless you just punch through it. He led them to the engineering section of the ship, where his team had been working on something that looked like a cross between a rocket engine and a pile driver. It was huge, mechanical, and completely unlike anything the advanced civilizations would consider building. We call it the dimensional punch drive, Martinez explained. Instead of bending space-time with energy fields, we're going to physically push our way through the dimensional barriers. This cannot work, Dr. Elanthy said flatly. You cannot simply force your way through dimensional barriers with mechanical pressure. Watch us, Stone replied with a smile. The first test ship was the USS Breakthrough, a small vessel that had been retrofitted with the new drive system. The entire fleet gathered to watch as the ship prepared for its maiden voyage. Beginning dimensional breach sequence, announced the Breakthrough's captain over the COM system. All ships maintain safe distance. The new drive system activated, with a sound like the universe tearing. Instead of the elegant fade-out that marked conventional faster-than-light travel, the Breakthrough simply smashed through the fabric of space-time, like a sledgehammer through a window. The ship didn't disappear. Gracefully, it punched a hole in reality and fell through it, leaving behind a crack in space that slowly healed itself with visible sparks and energy discharge. Breakthrough reporting successful transition to hyperspace. Came the transmission a few seconds later. Drive system operating within normal parameters. Beginning return journey. The ship reappeared with the same violent disruption, tearing another hole in space-time and tumbling through it like a rock thrown through a window. Dr. Elanthy stood in stunned silence for a full minute before speaking. This should not be possible. You are using brute force to achieve what we accomplish through careful manipulation of quantum fields. And it works, Stone pointed out. Sometimes the universe responds better to a direct approach than to sophisticated mathematics. The implications were staggering. If humans could mechanically breach dimensional barriers, they could potentially access parts of the universe that energy-based civilizations had never dreamed of reaching. But the real surprise came when they tested the drive against devourer technology. The mechanical creatures, so adept at analyzing and countering energy-based attacks, had no idea how to handle a ship that simply punched through their dimensional shields. They're trying to adapt, reported Dr. Amanda Foster during the next engagement. But their countermeasures are based on energy patterns and quantum effects. They can't analyze something that operates on pure mechanical force. A human fleet began experimenting with other mechanically impossible devices. They built projectiles that changed direction in flight using internal gyroscopic effects that violated conservation of momentum. They created armor that physically existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, held in place by mechanical anchor points rather than energy fields. How are your projectiles changing course without external force? Dr. Elanthy demanded after watching a tungsten rod weave through devourer point defenses like a living thing. Mechanical advantage, Stone explained. We're using rotating masses and gyroscopic effects to create momentum changes that don't register as energy emissions. The devourers can't track what doesn't exist in their physics databases. The breakthrough weapon was the reality anchor, a massive mechanical device that looked like a cross between a construction crane and a dimensional portal. Instead of using energy fields to stabilize space-time, it employed pure structural engineering to prop open rifts in reality. "This is madness," Dr. Elanthe said as she watched the device being assembled. "You cannot hold open a dimensional rift with mechanical struts and support beams." "We're not holding it open," Martinez explained. "We're building a doorway. The rift wants to close, but our mechanical framework is stronger than the forces trying to seal it." The reality anchor allowed the human fleet to attack from multiple dimensions simultaneously. They could fire kinetic projectiles from one dimension while launching chemical explosives from another, creating a crossfire that the Devourers couldn't predict or counter. The mechanical creatures, accustomed to dealing with energy-based attacks from a single-dimensional plane, had no idea how to handle physical structures that existed in multiple realities at once. "They're completely unable to adapt," Foster reported during a major engagement. "Their algorithms are designed for energy, patterns, and quantum effects. They can't comprehend mechanical structures that operate outside normal physics." The final test came when the human fleet engaged a devourer harvesting facility around a dying star. The mechanical creatures had built a massive collection array that was draining the star's energy to power their expansion. Instead of using exotic weapons or reality warping technology, the humans solved the problem with characteristic simplicity. They used their reality anchor to open a dimensional gateway directly above the facility, then dropped a mechanically guided asteroid through it. The asteroid, weighing several billion tons and moving at tremendous speed, smashed into the Devourer facility like a hammer hitting an egg. The entire structure collapsed in on itself, creating a chain reaction that destroyed the star system's remaining Devourer ships. "Incredible," Dr. Elanthe whispered as she watched the destruction. "You solved a problem that our best scientists said was impossible, and you did it by dropping a rock on it." "Sometimes," Stone replied, "the best solution is the obvious one. You just have to be willing to think simply." As the human fleet prepared for the final assault on the Devourer home system, word spread throughout the galaxy. The primitive humans, dismissed and rejected by advanced civilizations, had found a way to break the laws of physics themselves. They didn't bend reality with elegant mathematics or sophisticated energy manipulation. They simply built bigger hammers and hit the universe until it gave them what they wanted. And somehow, impossibly, it worked. The Devourer home system was a nightmare of metal and darkness. Where once there had been planets and moons, now only twisted mechanical structures remained. The creatures had consumed everything natural and rebuilt it into a massive harvesting facility that surrounded the system's star like a metal shell. Captain Nicole Turner stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the tactical display with growing amazement. The structure was enormous, easily the size of a small planet, with countless mechanical tentacles extending toward the star to drain its energy. "How many Devourers are we looking at?" she asked Lieutenant Chris Parker. "Sensors are having trouble getting an accurate count," Parker replied. "The structure is interfering with our scans. Best estimate is several thousand individual ships, all connected to the main harvesting array." Behind them, the combined galactic fleet had assembled for what everyone hoped would be the final battle. Human ships flew alongside Zephyrian Crystal vessels and Kethver stone cruisers. For the first time in galactic history, the advanced civilizations were following human tactical doctrine. "The alien ships are reporting ready," announced the communications officer. "They've loaded their weapons with the kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives we provided," Turner nodded. It had taken weeks to retrofit the alien vessels with primitive human weapons, but the results had been worth it. The elegant energy-based weapons that had failed against the Devourers were replaced with simple kinetic cannons and chemical rocket launchers. "Signal from High Architect Velther," the communications officer continued. "He wants to speak with you." The main screen flickered to show the crystal alien, but his form was brighter now, filled with hope instead of despair. Captain Turner, our combined fleet is ready. We have studied your tactics and prepared our ships accordingly. Good, Turner replied. Remember, keep it simple. These creatures can adapt to complex technology, but they struggle with basic mechanical principles. Dr. Patricia Stone, now serving as the fleet's scientific advisor, studied the readings from the Devourer facility. The harvesting array is drawing massive amounts of energy from the star. If we can disrupt it, the entire system should collapse. How? Do we get close enough? Turner asked. That thing is the size of a planet. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez, who had been working on the problem for days, smiled grimly. We don't get close. We bring the target to us. He gestured to the massive device that had been assembled in the center of the human fleet. It looked like a construction crane crossed with a portal generator, all mechanical struts and rotating gears. The reality anchor was the largest version they had built yet, capable of opening dimensional rifts big enough for entire fleets to pass through. The plan is simple, Martinez explained. We open a dimensional gateway directly inside their harvesting facility. Then we drop every piece of heavy metal we can find through it. Dr. Elanthy, who had remained with the human fleet as an observer, brightened with understanding. You're going to mechanically breach their defenses from the inside. Brilliant in its simplicity. The battle began unlike any engagement in galactic history. Instead of elegant energy beams and sophisticated weapons, the combined fleet opened. Fire with tungsten rods, chemical explosives, and steel projectiles. The Devourer facility responded by deploying its adaptive defenses, but the mechanical creatures were still struggling to understand primitive human technology. First wave is having good effect, reported Dr. Amanda Foster from her science station. The Devourers are trying to adapt, but their countermeasures are still ineffective against kinetic weapons. Turner watched as the alien ships, their elegant designs now bristling with crude human weapons, poured fire into the Devourer facility. The Zephyrian ships sang as they fired their kinetic cannons, turning their musical voices into war cries. The Kethver vessels rumbled like avalanches as they launched chemical rockets, but the real surprise came when the Devourers began to adapt more quickly than expected. Their defensive systems evolved new countermeasures, deploying reactive armor and point defense grids designed to intercept physical projectiles. They're learning, Foster warned. Adaptation rate is increasing. Our kinetic weapons are becoming less effective. This was the moment Martinez had been waiting for. Activate the reality anchor, he ordered. Open dimensional gateway directly inside their main power core. The massive mechanical device began to turn, its gears grinding and pistons pumping as it forced open a hole in space-time itself. Unlike the elegant dimensional portals used by advanced civilizations, this one was crude and violent, tearing through reality like a buzzsaw through silk. The gateway opened inside the Devourer facility, bypassing all their external defenses. Through the dimensional rift, the human fleet could see the interior of the harvesting array, a maze of mechanical corridors and energy conduits. Fire through the portal, Turner commanded. Target their power systems. What happened next defied every law of physics the advanced civilizations held sacred. The human fleet fired kinetic projectiles through the dimensional gateway, but these weren't ordinary tungsten rods. They were equipped with mechanical guidance systems that used gyroscopic effects to change direction mid-flight, weaving through the Devourer facility like guided missiles. Impossible, Dr. Elanthy whispered. Those projectiles are changing. Course without external force. They're violating conservation of momentum. Not violating, Stone corrected. Redefining. We're using mechanical principles that exist outside normal physics equations. The guided projectiles struck the Devourer power cores with devastating effect. The facility's adaptive systems had no idea how to counter projectiles that operated on mechanical principles they couldn't analyze or understand. But the Devourers had one final surprise. As their facility began to collapse, they activated a last-ditch defense system. The entire harvesting array began to reconfigure itself, transforming from a stationary structure into a massive mobile weapon platform. "The facility is changing," Parker reported. "It's becoming some kind of superweapon." Turner watched in amazement as the Devourer facility unfolded like a mechanical flower, revealing weapon systems that dwarfed anything they had seen before. Energy beams lanced out from the transformed structure, but these weren't the sophisticated weapons the fleet had expected. "They're using our own tactics against us," Foster realized. "Those are kinetic weapons, but on a massive scale." The Devourers had learned to fight like humans, using brute force and mechanical principles instead of elegant energy manipulation. But they had made one crucial mistake. They were still thinking like machines, trying to optimize and perfect their approach. "They're using kinetic weapons, but they're making them too complex," Martinez observed. "Look at those targeting systems, all those mechanical computers and guidance arrays. They're still trying to make primitive technology sophisticated." Turner smiled grimly. "Time to show them how humans really fight. All ships, prepare for ramming speed." The order shocked the alien fleet commanders. Ramming attacks were considered barbaric by galactic standards, a tactic used only by desperate primitives. But the human fleet moved forward without hesitation. Their ships aimed directly at the Devourer super-dash weapon. At the last moment, the human ships activated their dimensional punch drives. Instead of elegant faster-than-light travel, they simply smashed through space-time itself, appearing inside the Devourer weapon platform before the mechanical creatures could react. The final battle was fought inside the Devourer facility itself. Human ships weaving through mechanical corridors while firing kinetic weapons at point-blank range. The Devourers, designed to analyze and adapt to external threats, had no idea how to handle enemies that had simply punched through their defenses and appeared inside their stronghold. "Direct hit on the main power core," Parker reported. "The facility is beginning to collapse." Turner watched as the massive Devourer structure came apart around them, its mechanical components falling away like pieces of a broken machine. The creature's adaptive systems, so effective at countering sophisticated technology, were helpless against the simple expedient of hitting them with something heavy at close range. "All ships clear the area," Turner ordered. "The star is going unstable." The combined fleet retreated through dimensional gateways as the Devourer facility's collapse destabilized the system's star. The harvesting array had been draining the star's energy for so long that removing it caused a massive stellar flare that consumed the remaining Devourer ships. 3 days later, Jake Morrison stood in the council chamber of Nexus Prime, but the situation was very different from his first visit. The alien representatives, who had once laughed at human technology, now looked at him with something approaching awe. "The Galactic Engineering Consortium wishes to extend immediate membership to humanity," High Architect Velther announced. "We have underestimated the value of your mechanical approach to universal challenges." "We accept," Morrison replied, "but with conditions. We want to establish exchange programs. Your people can learn our mechanical engineering methods, and we'll learn your advanced energy manipulation techniques." Dr. Elanthy, who had become humanity's biggest advocate among the alien scientists, stepped forward. "The combination of our technologies could revolutionize galactic civilization.